Why do Black individuals often feel that other races are against them? You rarely hear Hispanic, Asian, Indian, or other groups expressing similar sentiments. It's primarily Black people who voice this concern. Could it be that their historical experience of enslavement plays a role in their concerns? It is also crucial to note that on January 1, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln, a white man, issued the Emancipation Proclamation as the country neared the third year of a devastating civil war. This proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves in the states in rebellion are, and henceforward shall be free. It's important to remember how Native Americans were treated when European settlers arrived in America. They faced violence, land dispossession, and separation from their families, among other atrocities. On June 2, 1924, President Calvin Coolidge signed into law the Indian Citizenship Act, which marked the end of a long debate and struggle, at a federal level, over full birthright citizenship for American Indians, yet, we don't frequently hear them claiming that other races are against them. I think that the concept of using race as a card has been overextended by some Black individuals, and it's starting to wear thin for many people. This is the case of Daniel Penny, a former U.S. Marine.
Daniel Penny would be in jail.
And he punched a 67-year-old woman hard enough to break her orbital bone.
But first, let's look at the reason why BLM is back, or at least why they say they're back.
The jury has reached a unanimous verdict in the case of Daniel Penny. He's been found not guilty on the charge of criminally negligent homicide.
He's finally got the justice he's deserved.
Daniel Penny, a 24-year-old former US Marine, was riding the subway in New York when Jordan Neely, a 30-year-old man with a long history of mental illness, got on and started to intimidate other passengers with his behaviour.
The whole train was freaked out. He was either going to pull a gun, a knife, or
He said, I'm willing to die, I'm willing to get killed.
The three main threats that he repeated over and over was, I'm going to kill you, I'm prepared to go to jail for life, and I'm willing to die. I was scared for myself, but I looked around, I saw women and children. He was yelling in their faces, saying these threats. I couldn't just sit still.
Penny put Neely in a chokehold to restrain him with the help of other passengers, including several Black passengers. Neely died after being held around the neck for more than 6 minutes.
I think this guy is on drugs, because when he came in, he was unbelievably off the charts. He scared the living daylights out of everyone.
I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I had enough of this. The system is rigged.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who critics have described as being a radical leftist, was behind the indictment of Penny.
It's a failure on the part of Alvin Bragg. He tried this case for political, racial reasons.
The jury was asked to decide if Penny was guilty of second-degree manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide. After a 5-week trial on December 9th, Penny was acquitted of homicide. The more serious manslaughter charge had already been dismissed. Black Lives Matter launched street protests that very evening. While Penny went out with his lawyers, and a few days later was invited to a football game with Donald Trump. Speaking after the verdict, Penny said he doesn't regret his actions.
The guilt I would have felt if someone did get hurt, if he did do what he was threatening to do, would never be able to live with myself.
As soon as the verdict of not guilty came down, there were leftists who basically threatened to kill Daniel Penny.
We need some Black vigilantes.
Right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Graham, everybody. Shavona, I'd like to start with you, if I may. You attended the trial. You were there almost every day. And I know that the jury found Daniel Penny not guilty, and you do not respect that verdict at all. Why not?
I don't. When we look at the discrepancies in jury, when we look at a long history of white vigilantism, when we look at the overwhelming amount of facts from witnesses, medical examiners, and let's not forget a 6-minute long video, if Daniel Penny was a Black person or anyone other than a white, blue-eyed male, he would be serving time for his crime.
Brandon Tatum, I saw you smile a little bit. Ironically, when Shavona talked about white vigilantism, why did you pick up on that phrase?
Because I believe that it's disingenuous. I think that it's just propaganda. There's no truth in it. I mean, the young lady says that if he was black, he would be treated a different way. Give me an example of a black man doing exactly what Daniel Penny did and ended up getting a harsh sentence. I think the converse would happen. If Daniel Penny was a black man and Jordan Neely was a white man, we wouldn't be talking about this. If there were two black men, we definitely wouldn't be talking about it. If it was two white men, it would be an invisible situation. So I just think it's a talking point. I think that's maybe how some people may want to feel, but the reality is that that's just not true. I think this was a proper verdict. The jury did their job. Stevie Wonder can see that this wasn't an intentional murder, and I think Daniel Penny did what he had to do to protect the lives of other people.
A 6-minute long video with a medical examiner calling it a homicide. Jordan showed all signs of asphyxiation. He was, in fact, murdered. Brazilian jiu-jitsu workers, trainers, they all came on and said, no, the hole was improper. We had a Marine who trained Daniel Penny come in and said that Daniel Penny was wrong. If this were two white men, Daniel Penny would be in jail. If it were two black men, Daniel Penny will be in jail. But when we look at the long history of white vigilantism in America, from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin to another Jordan by the name of Jordan Davis, we see that white people felt empowered since the Fugitive Slave Act to take the law into their own hands.
Let me pose some of these points to Wilfred Riley now. Wilfred, Shavona has basically said that, in the course of the trial, experts came forward and said that Daniel Penny went well over the top in restraining Jordan Neely. What do you think?
I think Shavona gave an eloquent description of the past, but I mean, in reality, in modern day New York, I mean, if Daniel Penny were a black guy, he'd be Jordan Williams. We've seen a bunch of these cases as crime has surged over the past couple of years with people fighting along racial and political lines in the streets. Frankly, I mean, we've seen Jose Alba, we've seen Jordan Williams. I mean, in most of these cases, charges were brought. In most of these cases, charges were dropped or people were acquitted. So, I mean, I don't think it's the case that if a black man were charged with Daniel Penny style offenses, he would go to jail. In fact, the Jordan Williams charges, I believe, were dropped with more alacrity than Daniel Penny's charges. The Jordan Neely case was a situation where Jordan Neely wasn't an innocent Michael Jackson impersonator.
Shavona, we're going to let him finish his point because we can't hear you.
44 previous felony offenses. On one occasion, he snatched a 7-year-old kid. On another occasion, he punched a 67-year-old woman hard enough to break her orbital bone. I don't really know why in the USA, whether or not you think a line was crossed during this particular fight, we make heroes out of this type of guy. But, I mean, as Jordan Neely said things like, I'm going to hurt everyone in this train car, I'll kill, I don't care if I go to prison. Daniel Penny, along with two other guys, by the way, one of whom was black, jumped in and subdued this guy. So I'm not at all surprised to see a not guilty verdict in this sort of case. I trained as a lawyer. Mr. Tatum was a police officer. I mean, juries can go either way, but this is not at all a surprising verdict.
Shavona.